One of the things that to this day, very moment of recording this video and making this statement about Andrew Wakefield that continues to upset me to this day is that even before the fraud, ethics, conflicts of interest, and record dispendency were exposed with Andrew Wakefield, the paper that he had written was too weak, just far too weak, to support the public conclusion that people drew from it. The problem with this is that you know the 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 study, right, it was a small uncontrolled case series of 12 children, so your sample size there is 10 equals 12. And scientists and people that are members of that intellectual and scientific community around research, do studies and everything, and in order for us to really expect that the smoking gun, so to speak, of causation and everything, we demand sample sizes in the orders of thousands. And you'll often find that there are place who will try to justify whatever it is they're selling with sample size on the order of 50 to 100 people. None of 12 children who reported signs getting the MMR vaccine is doesn't tell us anything at all about how the 13th child will respond to this, because this paper, even before retraction, was a hasty generalization fallacy based on an insufficient sample size, and everything, and plus this sample had no control randomization and no blind, no reliable estimate of how often the alleged outcome occurred, no way to compare vaccinated children with unvaccinated children, and a sample too small and selectively assembled to generalize from. So, basically, what we saw gave us no reason to suspect that the 13th child who receives the MMR vaccine will respond the way that these 12 children allegedly did on the whole thing. It gives us no reason to go there at all. It doesn't make it even slightly will respond. Sample wise, similarly to it, Chadwick was the one running. Nick Chadwick was the one researcher, the PhD researcher that was running Andrew Wakefield's samples and everything. And you know what he didn't find in the samples? Measles. Even the smallest amount of them in micro traces of measles. He didn't find shit. And yet, to this day, people are calling the retraction by the Lancet, censorship. You know, Andrew Wakefield is still able to speak out. He can come here on YouTube and make his statements all he wants. Nothing is stopping him from, making his presence known and speaking publicly and everything. He just isn't able to get published in scientific papers to anywhere near the same degree that he used to be able to. And the problem that I have with all of it is that they've tried to make him into a martyr, and on top of all that, his paper was weak before they retracted it. We've been trained at this point. I've done a lot of work to understand that antidotes are not evidence. Like the antidotal data is antidotes are not data, and they are not antidotal information is not data. Information is not, able to justify, sweeping conclusions like the ones that we got from Andrew Wakefield's paper. What really goads me is that, even after the retraction was issued by the Lancet, even after all of this stuff has come out about the whole thing, even after Brian Deere's absolutely wonderful documentary about Andrew Wakefield and the fraud that he committed and everything, an absolute hero as a journalist to do what he did in the digging. The thing that goads me to no end about that fraud and public, fraudster is uh, the fact that even before the retraction, even before we started contesting the antidotes that were used to justify his papers, even before all that information came to light. The paper that the Lancet happened to post was based on a sample size of only 12 children, as opposed to samples on the order of thousands, like serious scientific papers are, you know? I know that Andrew Wakefield was gearing up to do the larger test and everything. I understand that he was gearing up to do that and everything before, but then all that information came out about him and ended his career and got him struck from the medical record, which, you know, to be honest, I understand, but when I look at the paper, which is still available and everything, because of the historical context of everything, what jumps out at me is just that it was 12 children, which gives us no reason to suspect. Like I said, it doesn't make it even slightly. It is so small as to make the likelihood that the 13th child that receives the MMR vaccine will respond the way that the children in that study did. It makes it more likely by 0.0 followed by an infinite progression of the zeros percent more likely that the child will, respond in a similar manner to the MMR vaccine as the ones in the paper. It makes absolutely no difference and makes us not even gives us no reason to rationally justify even suspecting to the slightest degree that a 13th patient who receives this shot will respond the way that the children in this study did. Because the sample size is so small, you cannot generalize from it.